Have you ever said something you wished you could take back? Not because you meant it, but because in that moment your emotions spoke before your wisdom had a chance to. Perhaps it happened during an argument with someone you love. Perhaps a careless comment stayed with you for days. Or maybe it wasn't anger at all. Maybe it was fear that stopped you from taking an opportunity. Or anxiety that convinced you not to speak. Or disappointment that quietly stole your motivation. We've all experienced moments like these. Moments where a single emotion changed the direction of an entire day. Sometimes even an entire life. The surprising part is that emotions are not the enemy. Without them, life would lose its color. Joy would mean nothing. Love would have no depth. Compassion would disappear. Even courage would no longer exist, because courage only matters when fear is present. The problem isn't that we feel. The problem is that too often we allow our feelings to become our decisions. Imagine you're driving down a quiet road. Suddenly, someone cuts in front of you without warning. Your heart races. Your muscles tighten. Before you've even had time to think, anger has already arrived. Feels automatic. Feels justified. And if you're not careful, that single moment can stay with you for the rest of the day. You arrive at work frustrated. You respond impatiently to a colleague. You carry that tension home. A few seconds on the road become hours of emotional weight. The event lasted only moments. The reaction lasted much longer. This is how emotions quietly take control. Not because they're stronger than us, but because they're faster. Long before human beings built cities, wrote books, or invented technology, survival depended on quick reactions. If our ancestors stopped to carefully analyze every rustle in the bushes, they might not survive long enough to learn whether it was the wind or a predator. The brain evolved to react first, think later. Even today, that ancient system still lives inside every one of us. Deep within the brain is a small structure called the amygdala. Its job is simple: protect you. It scans your environment every second, searching for anything that might threaten your safety. The challenge is that it doesn't always distinguish between physical danger and emotional discomfort. Critical email, an unexpected bill, a disagreement with someone you care about. To your emotional brain, these experiences can trigger the same alarm system that once protected our ancestors from real danger. Your heart beats faster. Stress hormones flood your body. Your attention narrows. In that moment, the logical part of your mind is no longer leading the conversation. Your emotions are. Understanding this changes something important. It reminds us that reacting emotionally isn't a personal weakness. It's a deeply human experience. But being human doesn't mean being powerless. Think about an experienced firefighter. When entering a burning building, they feel fear. Their heart races just like anyone else's. The difference isn't the absence of emotion. The difference is training. Experience has taught them not to let fear make the decisions. The same principle applies to every area of life. Emotion will always knock on the door. Wisdom decides whether it gets invited inside. One of the greatest misunderstandings about emotional strength is the belief that strong people don't feel deeply. Nothing could be further from the truth. The calmest people often experience the same emotions as everyone else. They simply recognize that emotions are temporary visitors. They don't build permanent homes for them. Imagine standing beside a river. Leaves float past on the surface. Some are bright, some are dark, some move quickly, others drift slowly. You don't chase every leaf downstream. You simply watch them pass. Thoughts and emotions work in much the same way. They appear, they move through us, then they leave. The difficulty begins when we grab hold of every emotion that passes by. We replay it, analyze it, feed it with more thoughts. Soon, a moment of frustration becomes an afternoon of resentment. A brief disappointment becomes a week of self-doubt. An uncomfortable conversation becomes proof that we're somehow not enough. The emotion itself may have lasted only seconds. Our attention is what keeps it alive. A teacher once asked her students to carry a backpack filled with heavy books throughout an entire school day. At first, everyone managed without much difficulty. But as the hours passed, shoulders began to ache. Backs became sore. Simple tasks felt exhausting. At the end of the day, the teacher asked a simple question. What was heavier this afternoon than it was this morning? The students answered, "The backpack." The teacher smiled. "No," she said, "the weight never changed. You simply carried it for too long." Many of us do exactly the same thing with emotions. We carry yesterday's frustration into today, today's worry into tomorrow, old disappointments into new relationships. Eventually, we forget what it feels like to put the backpack down. Here's something worth remembering. You are not your anger. You are not your fear. You are not your sadness. You are the person experiencing those emotions. That distinction may seem small, but it changes everything. When you say, "I am angry," the emotion becomes your identity. When you say, "I notice that I'm feeling angry," something remarkable happens. A little space appears between you and the emotion, and within that space lies freedom. Freedom to pause. Freedom to choose, freedom to respond instead of react. That pause may last only a few seconds, yet those few seconds have the power to change conversations, relationships, careers, and even the direction of a life. The strongest people are not those who never lose control. They are the ones who notice themselves before control is completely lost. And like every meaningful skill, emotional mastery begins with awareness. Not with perfection, not with suppressing feelings, but with the simple willingness to observe what is happening inside your own mind before allowing it to decide what happens next. There is a moment that exists in every human life, a moment so small that most people never notice it. It lasts only a fraction of a second. Yet within that single moment lies the difference between wisdom and regret. It is the space between what you feel and what you choose to do next. Most people believe emotions create actions, but they don't. Emotions create impulses. Your actions are still a choice. That choice may not always feel obvious. Sometimes it arrives quietly. Sometimes it disappears almost as quickly as it appears, but it is always there. Learning to recognize that space is one of the greatest skills you can ever develop. Imagine holding a lit match. The flame itself isn't dangerous. Holding on to it for too long is. Negative emotions work the same way. Feeling anger is natural. Holding on to anger long after the moment has passed is what begins to burn you. The same is true for fear. Fear can warn you of genuine danger, but when fear becomes your permanent advisor, it slowly convinces you that every opportunity is a threat. The goal is not to eliminate emotions. The goal is to stop allowing temporary feelings to become permanent decisions. One of the simplest ways to do this is surprisingly powerful. Give your emotion a name, not because naming it makes it disappear, but because naming it changes your relationship with it. Instead of saying, "Everything is falling apart," pause and say, "I'm noticing anxiety," instead of saying, "This person ruined my day." Try saying, "I'm experiencing frustration." The language may seem like a small change, but language shapes awareness. Awareness creates choice, and choice creates freedom. Another practice is equally simple. Slow your breathing. When emotions become intense, your breathing often becomes shallow and fast. Your body prepares for danger, but when you deliberately slow your breath, you send a different message to your nervous system. You tell your brain, "The danger has passed." Your heartbeat slows. Your muscles relax. Your thoughts become clearer. You don't breathe slowly because everything is okay. You breathe slowly so your mind has a chance to discover that perhaps everything isn't as catastrophic as it first appeared. There is another question that can quietly transform the way you respond to difficult moments. Ask yourself, will this matter 1 year from now? Most of the time, the answer is no. Not because your feelings aren't real, but because time has a remarkable way of shrinking the problems that once felt overwhelming. Think back 5 years. Can you remember something that once kept you awake at night? A mistake, an argument, an embarrassing moment. At the time, it felt enormous. Today, it may be difficult to remember the details. The problem wasn't permanent. Only your perspective made it seem that way. There is a story about an elderly craftsman known throughout his village for his calm nature. No matter what happened, he never seemed rushed, angry, or overwhelmed. One day, a young apprentice asked him, "How do you stay so calm when everyone else loses control?" The old man smiled and placed a cup of tea on the table. Then he filled it until the tea overflowed onto the floor. The apprentice jumped back. "It's spilling," he shouted. The old man nodded. "Exactly. When the cup is already full, even one more drop causes it to overflow." He looked at the young man and continued, "Most people begin each day with a full cup. Yesterday's worries, old resentments, unfinished conversations, constant pressure. Then one small inconvenience arrives, and they believe it is the cause of their anger. It isn't. It was only the final drop." Those words contain a quiet truth. Our reactions are rarely created by a single moment. They are often the result of many moments we never allowed ourselves to release. That is why rest matters, reflection matters, forgiveness matters, not because they change the past, but because they empty the cup. Perhaps the greatest misunderstanding about emotional control is the belief that it requires becoming cold or detached. In reality, emotional mastery allows you to feel more deeply, not less. When anger no longer controls you, kindness becomes stronger. When fear no longer controls you, courage becomes possible. When anxiety no longer controls you, presence becomes natural. You stop reacting to life. You begin responding to it. And there is an extraordinary difference between those two ways of living. Reaction is automatic. Response is intentional. Reaction is driven by impulse. Response is guided by values. Reaction asks, "How do I feel right now?" Response asks, "Who do I want to become?" That single question has the power to reshape an entire life, because every response becomes a vote for the person you are becoming. Every patient conversation, every calm decision, every moment you choose understanding over anger, every time you pause before speaking, you are quietly building a new identity, not through dramatic change, but through small choices repeated consistently. Remember this: your emotions are messengers. Listen to them, learn from them, but don't hand them the steering wheel. The strongest person in the room is rarely the loudest. It is often the one who remains calm when everyone else is consumed by emotion, the one who chooses clarity instead of chaos, compassion instead of resentment, patience instead of impulse. That kind of strength isn't inherited. It is practiced, one conversation at a time, one difficult moment at a time, one conscious breath at a time. As you move through the days ahead, there will still be moments that test you. Someone will disappoint you. Plans will change. Unexpected problems will appear. Life will continue to be unpredictable. But your peace does not have to depend on perfect circumstances. It can depend on something far more reliable, your ability to choose your response. And perhaps that is what true emotional freedom really means. Not controlling the world around you, but no longer allowing the world around you to control what happens within you. Because your emotions are part of your story. They are not the author of it. You are. So the next time anger knocks on your door, pause. Take one slow breath. Notice what you are feeling without becoming what you are feeling. Then choose the response that your future self will thank you for. Because every moment of emotional awareness is more than a victory over a single feeling. It is another step toward becoming the kind of person who remains steady when life becomes uncertain. And in a world that constantly demands your reaction, your greatest strength may simply be your ability to remain calm,